How's everyone today? I'm glad to see so many of you here today. You know, I was here last Thursday, and when I walked in, you know how many people were here? 3. I felt very sad. No. Oh, okay. Well, you need to check the updates. But anyhow, in the end, I think we had about 10 people. So, okay. So anyhow, good to see you all here today. And we thought we would start with this article because I think, you know, over the years, many years, I've talked to many Taiwanese friends and I've asked them, I said, how do you learn English? And so many people have told me over the last 40 or 50 years, I think, that they've studied English. They say they learn it from 空中英语, right? Yeah. So I think you probably heard the founder of, we used to call it ORTV, Overseas Radio and Television. She just passed away. And actually, I knew her quite fairly well. My father knew her in Hualien back in the 1950s, 50年代. And my sister was her secretary for a while. So anyhow, it was, you know, she lived a good long life. 98 years old is a long time. And her birthday was only 2 days ago. So she just turned 98. But anyhow, I thought we would start with this article because she had a very interesting life in Taiwan. So her name was Doris Brome. Of course, I think you all know her as Peng Menghui, right? Okay, so it says Doris Brome passes away at 98. So it says years of service. Doris Brome's program and magazine supplemented classroom material of 3 generations of English language learners in Taiwan. Okay, now, first of all, when we say supplement, what does that mean? Yeah, so I think many of you probably, because I see 广告 on TV every day, people take vitamin supplements, okay? You know what I'm talking about, right? You take one pill and it has, you know, vitamin A, B, C, and D, and all these other vitamins and minerals inside. We call that kind of a pill. We call that a supplement because it supplements it adds to your intake of vitamins and minerals. And, you know, of course, we all eat food, right? And the food has vitamins, but we call those pill supplements. So that's, of course, a 名词, but here it's a 动词. A supplement means, like you said, to add to something, right? So if you're doing something, let's say you have you're working on something, but you want to add to that, you supplement it, or you can supplement a plan, you can supplement anything, really, is where you add to it. It's something extra, okay? So why don't we say it together? Supplement. Supplement. So it says here her program, of course, she had actually many programs, you know, like a radio show program, TV program, support and magazines, of course, supplemented. So they added to classroom material of the 3 generations of English language learners in Taiwan. So there were 3 generations, or 年代. And so, yeah, so they had their classroom material, like maybe their textbooks or, you know, English learning material, and then this program in the magazines added to that. So it was a very good, fairly effective way of doing things. Okay, so let's read the article. It says, celebrated English language educator Doris Brome, also locally known as Peng Menghui, died on Tuesday evening. She was 98. Now, her last name is pronounced Brome. It's a, yeah, we don't, there's G and H is not we don't pronounce that. So it's just like Brome, yeah. Okay, and of course she is an educator, which is another way of saying teacher or anyone who is education, okay? So let's read this together. Oh, I forgot to mention, what does celebrated mean? Now, you might think, well, you know what a celebration is. Yeah. So when we say someone or something is celebrated, it doesn't mean people are celebrating. It means it's famous. People, it's well known. We could say that, or famous, okay? So why don't we say a word together? Celebrated. Celebrated. Okay, so let's read this together. Celebrated English language educator. Educator. Doris Brome also known locally as Peng Meng Hui, died on Tuesday evening. She was 98. Okay, so it says here, Brougham was the creator of Studio Classroom, a popular English language radio program which first aired in 1962, and the magazine's Let's Talk in English, and the magazine Let's Talk in English. Her work had benefited 3 generations of English language learners in Taiwan. Okay, so I think you all know probably the Studio Classroom. Actually, I think they had some other magazines too. They had like different levels. But anyhow, that was the most famous. So it was a popular English language radio program which first aired. Now, you know aired. What would be another word for aired? Broadcast, yeah. So we could say, obviously when we talk about TV or radio, we often refer to the word broadcast. And we could say that we could talk, if we want to use this as a noun, like we talk about a TV show, we could say broadcaster. Now, broadcaster could be a person or it could be a show, I guess. But yeah, broadcast. Why don't we say it together? Broadcast. Broadcast. But here, of course, we often say aired because it goes through the air, right? So, okay, let's read this together. Brougham was the creator of Studio Classroom, a popular English language radio program which first aired in 1962. And the magazine Let's Talk in English. Her work had benefited 3 generations of English language learners in Taiwan. Let's say this word again, benefited. Benefited. Of course, benefited means to provide benefits, to help, right? To assist, or provide a 好处. Okay, so it says here, Brougham in 2022 received the Order of Brilliant Star for her contribution to Taiwanese society. She was among the first foreigners to obtain permanent legal residency in Taiwan and became a citizen in May last year. Actually, I didn't know that. I knew she had this, but I didn't know she got a 身份证. Okay, so she became a citizen in May last year. Okay, so this is obviously an award, a government award, or some people say a medal, but it's an award. I know that many high-ranking foreign officials or friends of Taiwan get this award. So it was received for her contribution to Taiwanese society. Okay. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, I know this is the correct English name because I've seen this award mentioned many times, Order of Brilliant Star. But yeah, the Order of Brilliant Star. Okay. It's kind of like, in England, in Britain, the Queen or the King will often give, we say, a knighthood. And there's different orders. It's almost like there's these different groups, but you have an order of whatever. And so often after a person's name, you'll see these initials like OBE or other names, and it means they were given a knighthood. And you know what a knight is, right? It's an very old name, like we think about King Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table. Of course, these are, when we think of a knight from hundreds of years ago, they're wearing armor. But today, knighthood is like an award, right? So we call that a knighthood. It's like, this is a noun, to receive a knighthood. And we can say they were knighted with an ED. So the queen or the king knighted her or him, or gave them, we say to give them a knighthood. Okay. Yeah. Pretty much if you're famous in England, if you're an actor or TV star, movie star, singer, pretty much anyone, you get a knighthood, I think, sooner or later. But yeah, it's kind of cool. Yeah, right. So actually, that's a good thing to remember. If you're a man, then you start your name. You can be called Sir, S-I-R, Sir, whatever. Yeah, like I think Elton John. I think he has a knighthood, so it's Sir Elton. And for women, is it Madam? I forget what the for a woman getting knighted. I forget what the. Yeah, I need to look that up. But anyhow, I know it's always Sir. So anyhow, let's read this together. Rome in 2022 received the Order of Brilliant Star. Let's say it again. Brilliant Star for her contribution to Taiwanese society. Society. She was among the first foreigners to obtain permanent legal residency. Residency in Taiwan and became a citizen in May last year. Okay, so I forgot to mention a couple things. Everybody, I think we know all know what brilliant means, right? Yeah, what would be an even simpler word? We'd say bright, right? Yeah, like starts with B-R-I too, right? Bright, so brilliant, shiny. Okay, so we usually describe the sun as being brilliant because it's very bright. Okay, so why don't we say that word again? Brilliant. Brilliant. But it can also mean what? Smart, yeah. So I know in England, my British friends, they like to use this word a lot as means something. They also mean if it's just great, So if you're with my British friends and they really like something, they're like, oh wow, that's brilliant. It's like saying that's great. That's their expression. In America, I don't hear that used in that way as much. Brilliant usually means smart or intelligent, super intelligent, or shiny or bright. Okay. So bright can also be used for intelligent, very intelligent. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Usually, well, for knighthoods, I notice they're listed after the name. So it'll say, it'll give their name, and then after it'll have the initials. Like OBE, I think, stands for Order of British Empire or something like that. And then there's others. So they'll have the name, and then they'll have their knighthood. Now, of course, there may be other titles too, but usually the initials come after the name. Like if you have a PhD or you're an MD or whatever, it'll have those initials after your name. So yeah, I don't know. There may be other ways to handle that, but yeah. So anyhow, she received this for her contribution to Taiwanese society. Now, of course, obtain. We've talked about this word before. It means to get. It's a word means get. Permanent legal residency. Of course, that's kind of like what I have. I mean, many foreigners have permanent legal residency now. We say 永久居留证, right? And then, of course, but she also became a citizen. It's funny, I think I've told you this before. When I write articles about Taichung or Taiwan, often I'll notice writers will say, this library is built it's open to all citizens, okay? I generally don't use that word. I change it to residents. Because citizen it means that you are an actual citizen of Taiwan. But of course, this library is open to everybody, right? I often say residence means like you're living here in the city. But citizen actually means you have a 身份证. Okay, so yeah. Not yet, no. Many British accents, but it is quite funny. Americans, when they hear British people talking, some British people in England, in Britain, there are many different accents, different regions, and some are easy to understand and some are really hard to understand. And my friends are just like, are they speaking English? You know, it's so difficult. Scottish accent is difficult. That one, yeah, I think Scottish is one of the most difficult accents. And then there are specific regions in England. I can't tell you, maybe Northern England, it's a little bit maybe closer to Scotland. Some of their way of talking is just really, you have to listen very carefully. It's kind of like if you go to China, right? I remember when I went to visit China several times, and I was traveling in places like Sichuan, and I was like, are they speaking Zhongwen? What are they saying? You know, their accent was so heavy. Sometimes I couldn't tell, what they were saying, even though they were speaking, Zhongwen. So yeah, it's like that with England and places. I don't really know. Some people say that like West Coast American English, like California, the more Western United States, their accent is a little bit clearer. But if you go to the South or Texas, or you go to New York, or you go to Boston, New England, or even Chicago, they all have their unique kinds of accents. So I think when I think about a cleaner accent, easy to understand, I think of people maybe living in the West Coast, like not just California, but that part of the country. But yeah, so it's hard to say. I mean, Americans move around so much these days that you'll hear all kinds of things in different places. Okay. Oh, that's a photo caption. Okay, so let's keep going here. It says, born in 1926, wow, that's a long time ago, to a Christian family in Seattle, Brome at 21 left home to become a missionary in Shanghai. Following the Chinese Civil War, she moved from Shanghai to Taiwan. Okay, so it's interesting because when I was growing up in Taiwan, a lot of the older missionaries I knew were like her. They started in China, and then they moved to Taiwan. In fact, one of my best friends, his father was in Chengdu for about 2 years, and then the Gongchangdang came along and kicked out all the foreigners. So they ended up many of them went to Shanghai, and then from Shanghai they came to Taiwan. Or they went to Hong Kong, and then from Hong Kong to Taiwan. So anyhow, let's see here if there's any new words. No, I mean, a preacher is just a 牧师. Not all preachers are missionaries, right? So, I mean, you could be a 牧师 a preacher back in America, but a missionary is someone who usually goes out to somewhere else. So in case all of you don't know, missionary is 传教士, okay? So why don't we say a word together? Missionary. Missionary. Right. Okay. So let's read this. Born 1926 to a Christian family. In Seattle, Brome at 21 left home to become a missionary in Shanghai. Following the Chinese Civil War, she moved from Shanghai to Taiwan. And you all know what Civil War means, right? It's like a 内战, right? Okay. So it says here, Brome did missionary work with the Atayal communities in Hualien County, where she joined a local basketball team and taught Sunday school. Let's read the second sentence too. In 1951, she produced Taiwan's first evangelical radio program. Now, this word evangelical, it's a hard word to describe, but it comes from the word let me change the screen here. It comes from a 动词. It means to evangelize. And evangelize is a word that's connected to missionaries. It means to 传教, right? To teach people. Right, to go out and tell people about God and talk about the Bible and Christianity. So it means to, when we say to evangelize, it means to just, 传教. Yeah, and so when we say evangelical radio station, her program, her first radio show was, I think, not to teach English. It was a Christian, like a 基督教 radio show, radio program. Okay, so why don't we say that word together? To evangelize. To evangelize. Evangelical. Evangelical. Okay. It's not a word that we hear that often today. I mean, it's still used, but, and then of course here, this is, I think you know this is a taiatsu. But they say in English, they write it a tile. That's the way they write it. Okay. And yeah, she played in a basketball team. Okay. Okay. So let's read this. Brome did missionary work. Missionary work with Atayal communities in Hualien County, where she joined a local basketball team and taught Sunday school. In 1951, she produced Taiwan's first evangelical radio program. Okay, Sunday school, in case you don't know, Sunday school is, I think some of you know this, but Sunday school is usually like, it's like Bible class, but it's usually before church, right? So if you go to many churches, in Taiwan included, but also in America, there's the main church service. Like at the church I go to, 10:30, but before church service at 9:30, there's another class, and we call that Sunday school. And there's Sunday school for adults, there's Sunday school for kids. Yeah, so it's just like another Bible class before the normal, church service. Sure, of course. What? Sorry? Yeah. And I mean, even sometimes I get questions and I'm like, I need to go research that or ask the 牧师, right? So yeah, of course, with Sunday school, you need to know a lot about the Bible, but the purpose of Sunday school is to teach people about the Bible. So yeah, it's a good opportunity. And of course, it's open to anybody. You don't have to be part of the church or whatever. Okay, so I think you said that I teach Sunday school, right? Or I don't know. How did you know that? I'm curious. Oh, okay. Somebody mentioned. Okay, yeah. So I do teach an adult Sunday school class at my church. It's in English. So yeah. Okay, and of course you're all welcome. So yeah. I know that I've seen one or two students from this class. I've seen them over at the Sunday school class. So yeah. Okay, so it says here, later she launched Studio Classroom after realizing Taiwan lacked educational resources to learn English. Brome told the Taipei Times in an interview published in 2022, because that was just 2 years ago. Okay, so I think we've learned this word before, but what is a resource? I mean, there's many kinds of resources. Yeah, now it doesn't have to be, but this is, English learning material, but it could be natural resources, right? What's an example of a natural resource? Coal. Okay, what else? Water, wind, even sunshine is a natural resource. So yeah, we have many kinds of natural resources, but here we're talking about educational resources. Why don't we say that word together? Resources. Resources. Now, of course, we can personally have resources. Let's say, for example, you're going to do a project and your friends ask you, they say, well, do you have the resources to finish this project? Or do you have the resources to do this job? Now, that could be something from yourself, or it could be help from others. Those are all resources. Okay, so, yeah. It can be, I think, I'm trying to think, resourced. I think we could say resourced as a verb, but we would usually just say the word sourced or to find resourced. Yeah, we could use that as a verb. To resourced something. It means to use that as a resource, to get it as a resource. Yeah. Resourceful, or it means someone, yeah, smart, but it could also mean someone who is good at using things and finding things. Yeah, like coming up with plans and ideas. So he just mentioned, if you take this word and add it, F-U-L, resourceful, F-U-L, that means someone who's very resourceful. They're very good at finding things and getting things and doing things, okay? So if you say, oh, he's a very resourceful worker, maybe you need something or you're missing something or you can't find something, this person can go find it. They know how to take care of it. They know how to do it. They're very resourceful. Okay, so why don't we say together, resourceful. Resourceful. Right, okay. Let's read this in. Later, she launched Studio Classroom. Let's say it again, Studio Classroom. After realizing Taiwanese lacked educational resources to learn English, Brome told the Taipei Times in an interview published in 2022. Okay, now you know the word, I think you all know the word lacked. What does lack mean? If you lack, yeah, like 缺了, you say, what do you lack? Yeah, short of something. You can say, right now we lack enough students, or right now I lack enough energy. Anything that you're short of, you need more of, okay? Okay, so why don't we say a word together, lack. Okay. Okay, it says, let's go on here. It says, having witnessed several times Taiwanese youths having a hard time communicating and thus losing the opportunity to integrate internationally because of their inadequate English, I realized there was a strong need to teach them English, she said. Okay, so having witnessed, okay, so it means having seen, right? To witness means to see something. Yeah, to see with your eyes. So why don't we say together, witnessed. Okay, so we could say having seen several times Taiwanese youths, okay, we could just say youths or young people, okay. Why don't we say together, youths? Okay, now youth, of course, is a 形容词, but here it means it's a person or people. Okay, having a hard time communicating, and thus, or we could say, and what would be another word for thus? And very similar. Therefore, right? And therefore, losing the opportunity to integrate internationally. Now, this is a very good word. We use it a lot. What does integrate mean? Yeah, to combine, to come together, right? So if you take this thing and you put it together with this thing, we integrate them, we combine them, we put them together. It almost means like, in this way, it means to kind of like to join or to be part of something, right? So if you want to integrate internationally, it means you become part of the international community, right? Or the international scene or part of the world. So you join the rest of the world. So, to integrate is a very useful word. We can integrate people, we can integrate an idea into our plan. Let's say you have a plan, a 计划, and someone has a new idea. We say, well, I want to integrate this idea into our plan. It means to bring it into, to combine it. So it's almost like you have a big thing and then you bring something else into that, okay? You add it to this, okay? So why don't we say it together, integrate. Integrate. And the noun of this is integration with a T-I-O-N. So let's say it again, integration. Okay, so they lost the opportunity to integrate internationally because of their inadequate English. Now, of course, I think you know this. Adequate without the A-D-E, this one, adequate means what? Enough, right? You say, do you have adequate food for today? Have you gotten adequate rest? It means you have enough rest. Did you get enough rest or sleep? Adequate sleep. A lot of people talk about that. But then, of course, so why don't we say that word, adequate? Adequate. Okay, and then this word, of course, is the opposite. It's inadequate. Inadequate. Right, so a lot of people talk about having inadequate sleep. They're not getting enough sleep. Okay, but here, because of their inadequate English, okay, so she realized there was a strong need to teach them English. Okay, any questions? Yeah. Yeah. I honestly can't think of any reason why English will not stay as the main language. Long time ago, when I say a long time ago, I mean like 100 years ago, the language of international diplomacy was what? French, yeah. But, and it's funny, it still bothers them that English has replaced French. It's funny, the French, I think it's still kind of, they don't like the fact that English is now past that. But I think, I read that, for a while, some people thought, oh, maybe Chinese will grow. But I think the problem, Chinese has one huge challenge, and that is its writing system. It uses characters, right? And it's very difficult to learn characters. I mean, you all know, right? You have to spend a lot of time to do that. And English has that global, convenience of using an alphabet. And anyhow, I think it'll be the, Yeah. Yeah, but also, England, obviously the British Empire used to be, everywhere. What was it? You remember there used to be a saying, right, that said what about the British Empire? Do you remember that? Not that one. The British used to say, yeah, the sun never sets on the British Empire. Okay. What did that mean? It means it was global, right? So anywhere in the world, the sun was shining somewhere in the British Empire. So, with the British Empire, I think that spread English all over the place. Of course, Spanish, that goes way back. But then, of course, England kind of grew over Spain. The English Empire was bigger than the Spanish Empire. But then I think, the successor to the British Empire, of course, was then the American, power around the world as a superpower. And then, of course, English has just been used in so many countries. So anyhow, I think it's very large. A lot of my friends who live in America speak Spanish because if you live in certain parts of America, it's useful to speak Spanish. Particularly, it used to be only in California and Texas and southwestern United States, like Arizona, New Mexico. But now it could be anywhere in America. I mean, it could be anywhere. It could be in New York City. Speaking Spanish is useful because a lot of people have immigrated into America from Spanish-speaking places, especially from Central and Southern America. They come up, and of course, they mostly speak Spanish. There's one big exception in South America that doesn't speak Spanish. What country? What? Brazil. Yeah, of course, they speak Portuguese. Yeah. So who? Right. Right. Oh, Louisiana. And they speak what? French. Yeah. Oh, yeah, Cajun. Yeah, yeah. So Louisiana is a very interesting state because down there, their language or original language was French, Fawans. And some people still do speak French there. And of course, in Canada, French is the second language there, right? Yeah, in Quebec, they all speak French. And it's funny because many of my other Canadian friends, they really don't like having to learn French in school. I know when I was growing up, they were forced to learn French and they didn't want to because they felt it was too much mafan. But I think it kind of depends. I mean, I'm sure there are I know in Louisiana there are some poor areas, but I don't think it's 100% or anything like that. So, okay, so let's read this then. Having witnessed several times Taiwanese youths having a hard time communicating, and thus losing the opportunity to integrate internationally. Let's say it again. Integrate internationally because of their inadequate English. Inadequate English. I realized there was a strong need to teach them English, she said. Okay. It says, after it obtained permission for a free slot from the Broadcasting Corporation of China, Brome's program broadcasts weekly and spawned several magazines, including Let's Talk in English. Okay, so obtain, again, it means to get, right? Obtain permission. Permission means you can, okay, right? When you were a child, you had to ask your parents for permission to do everything, yes or no, for a free slot. Now, we say, when we talk about a period of time, we often talk about a time slot, right? Like we say, this class takes place in a 10 a.m. to 12 noon time slot, okay? But for radio shows, we often talk about a time slot. Now, slot is almost like a space, right? Like a slot in like when you unlock your door, you put the key into a slot in the door, right? It's like a space, usually like a narrow space. That's what we call a slot. And so we stick the key into the slot or the lock, and then we open it. So why don't we say that word together? Slot. Slot. Okay. And I think BCC, broadcasting, what is that? Zhongguang, right? Yeah. So Broadcasting Corp or Corporation of China. Okay. And this word is a great word. I think we've learned this word before, but let's look at it. Spawn. What does spawn mean? Yeah. So where does this word originally come from? You know where we? Yeah, but there's a specific kind of animal that it's connected to. Fish. Yeah. Yeah. So actually, we could also say, I think, frogs, but usually water animals that lay eggs. Okay. Usually especially fish. So we talk about spawning season for fish, okay? So, the very famous spawning season for fish is salmon. What is that? Guiyu, right? Because they come home and they swim up the river and they spawn, they lay their eggs, and then they die, I think, most of them. Actually, they all die. But anyhow, we call that spawning season. That's the season of the year. So well, it's interesting because I think they have to return to their home area or wherever they started. I don't know. It's very interesting. And they go a very long ways. I mean, they go upstream, which is kind of interesting. On the way, yeah. And many get, not just die, but many, it's a very interesting, if you ever get a chance to see it, they have, of course, some die, but not just from exhaustion, but what else really loves salmon besides people? Bears, yeah. If you ever get a chance to watch bears fishing for salmon, it's very, very interesting. They just love it because they sit there and wait at the river, and then they just catch these fish with their claws, right? And they get very fat because they're getting ready for the winter time. Okay, so why don't we say, so here spawn, of course, means to create or to give birth to. Maybe that's another way of saying if you give birth to something. Okay, so why don't we say together, to spawn. To spawn. Okay, so spawn several magazines, including Let's Talk in English, right? Okay, so let's read this. R-O-E, roe. Yeah, fish roe. I think so, yeah. So, you know, a lot of Japanese food uses fish roe. I think some Chinese food too, but it has those little eggs, you know, yeah. Okay, so why don't we start here? It says, after it obtained permission, let's say it again, obtain permission for a free slot from the Broadcasting Corp of China. Let's say it again, Broadcasting Corp of China. Brome's program broadcast weekly. Weekly. And spawned several magazines, including Let's Talk in English. Okay. It says here, her program and magazine supplemented the classroom material for countless English learners. Media success and unexpected celebrity status came as a surprise, as she had entered the radio business for religious purposes, Brome said. Okay, so again, here's that word supplement, her program magazine. So, you know, you're in the classroom studying at school, studying English, and then you can also listen to her program and read the magazine, and that supplements what you have in school or your classroom material for countless. Now, of course, when we say countless, it means beyond counting. Yeah, we can't count. There's just many, many, many people, right? Countless. Why don't we say it together? Countless. Countless. Like when you look in the sky at night, you can see countless stars, right? There's just so many stars. Okay, so it says here, media success and unexpected celebrity status. Now, you all know what celebrity means, right? What does that mean? Yeah. Now, this can be a noun. You know, you can say he is a celebrity, but you hear it's an adjective, 形容词, celebrity status. Okay, their status is a celebrity. They're famous, basically. Okay, so media success and so unexpected. She did not expect this. Celebrity status came as a surprise, as she had entered the radio business for religious purposes. So she was actually there to, you know, 传教, but she also became a celebrity. Okay, so let's read this. Her program and magazines supplemented the classroom material for countless English learners. Okay, let's say a word again, countless. Okay. Media success and unexpected celebrity status came as a surprise, as she had entered the radio business for religious purposes. Brome said. Okay, I just want to emphasize something. We say as she had entered. This word as means what? Means she was surprised because. Okay, so as here means because. Okay, because she had entered the radio business for religious purposes. Okay, what does that mean? Oh, okay. To a big tree, yeah. No, I think that's a good way of putting it. Okay. So it says here, it all started when I thought broadcasting would be a great evangelical way to reach people, she added. President William Lai was deeply saddened to hear the news of Brome's passing, presidential office spokeswoman Karen Guo said. Okay. So it also, yeah, okay. So I think this is a great, here's that word evangelical. So this is a 形容词 from that word. Okay. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, sure. I mean, he was even evangelizing. He was doing this. So yeah, anyone who's kind of actively telling people, well, yeah, I mean, he was the ultimate evangelizer. But anyhow, yeah, it's anyone who's actively going out, like a missionary would be, we could say they're evangelizing. Yeah. It's an interesting word, and I'm not quite sure where it comes from, but anyhow, I'm sure it has a maybe Latin root. Okay, so let's read this. It all started when I thought broadcasting would be a great evangelical way let's say that last part, evangelical way to reach people, she added. President William Lai was deeply saddened to hear the news of Brome's passing. Presidential office spokeswoman Karen Guo said. Right. It's funny. I used to occasionally, sometimes I would go to Taipei and join like the 行政院研考会. They would have these, they would ask these 英文顾问 to come in and talk about things. And sometimes she would show up. They would ask her, invite her there. So I'd be there and she would show up. And I always joke to my friends that when she entered the room, it was almost like the queen had showed up, you know? It was like the New Wang, because all the local government officials would be like, oh, please, you know, sit down here. And so she was really a VIP. It was kind of funny. Of course, she was very, we say down to earth. You know what down to earth means? Yeah. Well, it just means very, very normal. You know, like if someone is this is a very common expression. If we say he is very down to earth or she is very down to earth, it means that their head isn't up here, right? They're just like a normal person. Okay. Doris? Of course. I don't know. I don't know about her. I'm not quite sure who she is. But yeah, if down to earth is a very good expression. So if you meet someone and they seem very normal, even maybe they're even like Doris Brome, if they're quite well known and they're like kind of a celebrity, but then you meet them and it's just like talking to a normal person, right? We say, oh, wow, they're very down to earth. Okay. I guess. Yeah, I mean, yeah, it just means normal, like a ordinary, they're not really ordinary, but they act in a normal way. I don't know. Yeah, maybe we could say their head is in the clouds, but actually, I know a better expression. We could say their their nose is in the air. Okay, have you heard this one? If your nose is up there, right? It means you think you're better than others. You act like you're better or higher than others. So if you say, oh, her nose is in the air, it means that, yeah, it's the opposite of down to earth. Yeah, like kind of like that, yeah. So head, actually, I want to add, if we say someone's head is in the clouds, actually, this meaning is a little bit different. What it means, if your head is in the clouds, it means you're a dreamer. You know, you're not thinking about your normal life. You're always thinking about you're just like a dreamer. Yeah, maybe you're a little bit like you don't face reality very well. Sometimes maybe someone might say even someone who's a little bit naive, right? they're always dreaming, they're not really. So yeah, head in the clouds is more that idea. But nose in the air is definitely somebody who it's like the opposite of down to earth. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Let's go on here. It says here, Studio Classroom is part of the collective memory for generations of Taiwanese, and the nation expresses its gratitude for Brome's decades of work being a force for good and giving Taiwan a global voice. She cited the president as sane. This is Karen Guo, the spokeswoman. Okay, now when we say collective, what does this word mean? Yeah, it means shared. It's just another word for shared. So if you share something or a group of people share something, we say collective. If we say they collectively agreed to I don't know, take a vacation, it means they all agreed together. So to do something collectively, it becomes a fu. So if you add an ly, collectively, but collective means as a group. It's together, okay, shared. Okay, so let's say together, collective, collectively, collectively. So this is, I think the best way of saying this is a shared memory, okay, for generations of Taiwanese, and the nation expresses its gratitude. Gratitude means what? Thanks. Yeah, it's thanks for Brome's decades of work being a force for good. Okay, she was helping give Taiwan a global voice. Okay, so let's read this together. Studio Classroom is part of the collective memory for generations of Taiwanese. And the nation expresses its gratitude for Brome's decades of work being a force for good and giving Taiwan a global voice. She cited the president as sane. Okay. Premier was it Zhuo Chongtai? Is it Chong, right? Chong? Wrong. Oh, sorry, wrong. Yeah, it's funny. They often when they use English, this J actually is instead of a R, so it's like wrong, right? Wrong. Yeah. So Zhuo Rongtai wrote on Facebook that Brome's death is a blow to Taiwanese education, but her legacy of spiritual wealth and exemplary, that's a hard word to pronounce, exemplary life would forever remain an inspiration. Okay, so a blow, of course, a blow means a hit, a harm. It just means a hurt to Taiwanese education. But her legacy of spiritual wealth. Now, we've talked about this. What is a legacy? Yeah, something you leave behind, right? I think almost everybody hopes they will leave a good legacy someday, after they're gone, right? For many people, their legacy might be their family, right? Their children or their grandchildren, or maybe there's something they did at work or their job, or, I don't know, it could be anything. Or maybe they helped a lot of people, but that's something you leave behind. So why don't we say together, legacy. Legacy. Okay, so her legacy of spiritual wealth, okay, she was what we say wealthy spiritually, and exemplary life. What does exemplary mean? Yeah, but it just means I don't want to use the word amazing, but it just means special. What? Paragon. Yeah, paragon. You could say a paragon of something. Yeah, it means like it was just extra, a great example, a great symbol of something, exemplary life. Okay, So yeah, if someone says it's always positive. It's like a amazing, great example, unique, special, okay? Why don't we say it together? Exemplary. I think it's exemplary. Okay, exemplary life. Exemplary life. Yeah, sorry, I'm having a hard time with this word. Exemplary. Okay, would forever remain an inspiration. Of course, that means it inspires people, right? So this word kind of connects well with that word, because this means something that, like a symbol, something that stands up or stands out, and this is an inspiration. It inspires people, okay? Why don't we say that word together? Inspiration. Inspiration. Okay, so let's read this. Premier Zhuo Rongtai wrote on Facebook that Brome's death is a blow to Taiwanese education. But her legacy of spiritual wealth and exemplary life would forever remain an inspiration. Inspiration. Okay. Former President Tsai Ing-wen, in a social media post, said, "Although you have departed, Taiwan would forever be your home. You have fought well and finished the race. May the crown of righteousness forever rest on your brow." Okay, it's interesting because she's quoting here from the Bible. Okay, this sentence, this here is definitely taken from the Bible. So it says, "You have fought well and finished the race." Okay, this is, if you read Paul in the Bible, New Testament, he talks about this. So it says here, may the crown. What is a crown? How do you say it in Chinese? Crown? Yeah, it's something you wear on your head. So the crown, now of course this isn't a real crown. This isn't a physical crown, but we say a crown of righteousness. And what is, I think you all know what righteousness, what is that? Holy, righteous, good, right? To do the right thing. So it comes, you can see the word right? But if someone is righteous, it means they're not just, how do we put this? It means good, but in a upright, holy, righteous, pleasing to God, this kind of idea. So we say righteous. This word is almost always associated with religious, an idea of religious goodness, not just someone who's nice. But if we say someone is righteous, it means that they have followed the right way, the right teaching, okay? So why don't we say together, righteous? That's just this part here, righteous. And then as a 名词, righteousness. Righteousness. Okay, so it says forever, okay, 永远, rest on your brow. Now, this is an interesting word. We don't use this word a whole lot, but what is your brow? Yeah, this is your brow. It's kind of like your forehead or at the top. So when you wear a hat, right, or a crown, it sits on your brow, right here. So often when I think of brow, people, when we sweat, 流汗, we say a sweaty brow, like your head gets really sweaty here. No, well, this is your eyebrow, right? So this would be your brow up here. So anyhow, it's funny. It's a word we use, but it's used in very specific ways. So why don't we say together, brow? Brow. Okay. Okay, so let's read this. Former President Tsai Ing-wen, in a social media post, said, "Although you have departed, Taiwan would forever be your home. You have fought well and finished the race. May the crown of righteousness forever rest on your brow. Okay. Okay. Mm-hmm. Her birthday. Her birthday was on Monday Monday, I think. I think it was on Monday. My sister knows her birthday, but yeah, so yeah, it was very, very recent. But yeah, 98, that's a long time. So, you know, whenever I hear about someone who passes away in their 90s, I always think they had a good life, right? I mean, 90 years is enough, right? 90 something years. I mean, that's a long time. I don't know. It depends on my health, right? If your health is okay and you're 100 years old, and some people are very healthy at 100, great. But if you're not healthy, well, then, you know, I don't know, maybe not so good. But yeah, but anyhow, very interesting person. And she did, you know, commit her life to helping Taiwan, and very, very well-known person. You know, one thing that amazed me about her, and I saw this even a couple years ago, is I play two musical. Of course, I haven't played these instruments for a very, very long time, but I grew up playing piano and trumpet. You know, 小喇叭, right? She plays trumpet, okay? And I was amazed that even like a couple years ago, she was still playing her trumpet at concerts, you know, 音乐会. And I was like, wow, I mean, this person's like in her 90s, right? And she's still playing the trumpet. So yeah, it's kind of amazing. So anyhow, it's funny. I remember talking to my friends about her, and I said, you know, she just stayed very, very active her whole life. And I said, you know, somebody like that, when they say that active, I think it's one of those people, you see them, they stay all the way active, and then one day it's just like, boom, and that's it. They finish, right? It's not like, you know, some people, they kind of slowly go downhill, right? But someone like that, it's just like they stay active the whole way, and then one day it's just like over, right? It's just done. But yeah, which is, maybe that's a good way to go. So yeah, anyhow. Yeah. With her. Yeah. No, she loved Taiwan. Yeah. So, well, and she's not alone. There she is. A lot of people love Taiwan. That was a little bit earlier, younger. Doris Brome. Yeah. Okay. So let's go on to another article I saw today that was interesting. Where's this article? Oh, here we are. Okay, so of course we have to talk about the American presidential election. Very interesting. Lots going on there. Seems like there's something going on every day. You know, it's very interesting because this race is so up and down, right? When before Biden stepped down or decided he wasn't going to run, everyone was like, it's over, right? Trump's going to win, you know, for sure, because Biden, he's just too old. I mean, you've seen him, right? It's just pretty bad. But then when Biden stepped down and Harris now is apparently going to be the new candidate, it kind of gave new energy to the Democrats. And so now, you know, her popularity is up and everything. And I last week, I know most of you weren't here, but I said, right now, Harris, I said, right now, Harris is in we say, honeymoon period. Okay. So when you at the beginning of anything, like even when you first become president, or in her case, she's a new presidential candidate, you go through a honeymoon period, right? Everything's great. Everybody's excited. Everything's good. Maybe your popularity is up. But usually after that period is over, then things are, then you have to settle down and things get more serious. So I kind of feel like right now, Kamala Harris is in a honeymoon period for her because she's a new candidate. So anyhow, today the big news, or yesterday the big news, it says everybody wanted to know who she was going to pick for her vice presidential candidate. Most of my friends said it has to be a white guy, a white man, because she's we say a woman of color, right? And it's interesting because some people, of course, many people consider her African American, but she's actually not 100% African American. You know what she is? She's half Indian, right? So I know some African Americans don't really consider her as a full African American because she's really not. She's half. But anyhow, we say woman of color because she is a woman of color. But a lot of people felt, well, if she's a woman of color, we need to find a white man to be her vice presidential candidate. So there were several candidates, including the governor, the Zhouzhang of Pennsylvania, Bing Zhou, who was many people thought she would choose him, but she chose someone else. So it says here, Harris names Waltz as VP choice. Now, of course, VP stands for vice president. Thank you. The Trump campaign said it was no surprise that San Francisco liberal Kamala Harris wants West Coast wannabe Tim Walz as her running mate. So there's all this language going around. So it says here, now this is the Trump campaign, his team says it was no surprise that San Francisco liberal. Now we've talked about this. What does liberal mean? Yeah. Now, of course, in American politics today, liberal means you're very left wing, right? The opposite of liberal is what? Conservative, right? So this word conservative, 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 normally means 保守, right? But in politics, it often means more right. You 靠左边 or 右边, and then liberal is more left. Okay, so this is a word that has a lot of emotion behind it. If someone says, "Oh, he's a liberal," or far left, or she's a conservative, or far right, or whatever. So why don't we say the word together? Liberal. Conservative. Okay, now there's a very interesting word here. It says, according to the Trump's campaign, San Francisco liberal Kamala Harris wants West Coast wannabe. Now this is a very interesting word. It's kind of a made-up word, but now people use it. Do you know what this word means? Yes, exactly. So it comes from the word want to be. Okay, so if you are a wannabe, this is a 名词, right? It means that you want to be something else that you're not. Okay, so you could say he's a Hollywood actor wannabe or something. It means he's hoping to become famous. Okay, you hope to be something, but you're not that. You're not this yet. And so, yeah, want to be becomes wannabe. Okay, so why don't we say together, wannabe? Wannabe. This word is a very casual, almost like a slang word. It's not a word that we would use in a very common, in a very casual way we'd use it, but it's not a very formal word. Okay, so Trump's campaign is calling this VP, vice presidential candidate, a West Coast wannabe. Now, he's not from the West Coast, but West Coast wannabe as her running mate. Now, running mate is a word that we commonly use to mean your vice presidential candidate. It means someone who's running with you. They're like your running, of course, running for the election, running for the presidency, mate, your partner. So running mate. Okay, so let's go on and look at the article. It says, U.S. Vice President Kamala Harris, Kamala Harris, sorry, I always pronounce that right, Kamala Harris, on Tuesday introduced Minnesota Governor Tim Walz as her running mate for the Democratic presidential ticket. Now, we use this word ticket, of course. It's like, it means, it's like your, sometimes we use the word ballot, right? But ballot, ticket, we say he is on the ticket. It means he is part of her team, they're running together. It's another way of saying they're who's running. They're on the ticket. Often we say they're on the ticket. So the presidential ticket, because when you go to vote, right, you have a piao, right, and you'll see her name and his name on the ticket. So we say he is on the Democratic presidential ticket or ballot. Okay, so why don't we? Okay, and you know where Minnesota is? Does everybody know where Minnesota is? How good is your geography? What? Yeah, it could be. In the winter time. In the summer, it gets pretty warm. In fact, right now, this afternoon, I'm supposed to see a friend, 同学 from high school. She's here with her family, and they live in Minnesota. Okay, so Minnesota is in kind of the Midwest, but it's up in the north. It's right up against the Canadian border. So it does get cold in the winter time. They have lots of good winter sports there. So yeah, and what do we call that? Minneapolis and St. Paul? Twin cities, right? So there's two cities, right? They're almost like one city, right? Minneapolis and St. Paul. And we call those the twin cities, which is why their baseball team is called the Twins, right? Yeah. Okay, so why don't we say that word together? Minnesota. Minnesota. And I believe that's a Native American name, like an American Indian name. Okay, so let's read this together. U.S. Vice President Kamala Harris on Tuesday introduced Minnesota Governor Tim Walz as her running mate for the Democratic presidential ticket. Let's say those three words again. Democratic presidential ticket. Okay. It's going. It says, he's the kind of person who makes people feel like they belong and then inspires them to dream big. That's the kind of vice president America deserves, Harris said while standing with Walz at a campaign event in Philadelphia. And you all know where Philadelphia is, right? Where's that? Feichung, right? Yeah, in Pennsylvania, Bingzhou. It's where I went to university there for about 2 years. Philadelphia has a very famous nickname. Does everyone know what it's called? Actually, the word Philadelphia means something. It means, well, if you think of this word, well, I'll just write it. It means city of brotherly love. Okay, city of brotherly love. So that's what Philadelphia, the word Philadelphia actually means that. So yeah, that's their kind of like their slogan. So yeah, why don't we say together, Philadelphia? Philadelphia. Okay, so what is the slogan? Okay, very interesting. So for Bingzhou, every state has a slogan, like a special name. For Pennsylvania, I'll write it here. It's called the Keystone State. Now, Keystone is it's hard to explain, but it's a special, when you're putting a wall or something together, you have the special stone. It's almost like a foundational stone, but it has a very interesting shape to it. It kind of looks like this. I think I'm writing that correctly, but it's a special stone, 石头, when you're building something, and it goes in, I think it goes into the wall or something, but we call it a keystone because it's very important. It holds things together. So Pennsylvania is called the Keystone State. So if you look on the license plate, it'll say Keystone State on there, on the car, the license for the car. Yeah. So why don't we say together, Keystone State? Yeah, and it looks like that. That's like their logo. Yeah. Okay. So So it says here, he's the kind of person that makes people feel like they belong. What do you know what that means? If you say, I feel like I belong, what does that mean? Belong to what? Does everybody understand? Yeah, it makes you feel like we're included, right? So when you're a kid in school, right? When you go to school, everybody wants to belong, right? They want to be accepted. They want to be included. They don't want to be left out. So if you say makes people feel like they belong, it means makes people feel welcome, makes them feel accepted, makes feel like they're part of the group. Okay, so he makes people feel like they belong and inspires them to dream big. Now, of course, dream big means to have big dreams, right? To have big ambitions. Oh, yeah, it sounds nice. I don't know what it means, but no, I'm joking. But so okay, let's read this together. He's the kind of person who makes people feel like they belong, and then inspires them to dream big. To dream big. That's the kind of vice president America deserves, Harris said while standing with Waltz at a campaign event in Philadelphia. Okay, does everybody know what deserve means? Yeah, it means like something you should get. You deserve it, right? So you can deserve something good or bad, right? If you go out and lie and cheat and steal, what do you deserve? You deserve punishment, right? Or maybe some people say you deserve to go to jail, right? But if you help people and you do a lot to help other people, and like we read about Doris Brome, right? She did she spent her life serving Taiwan. She deserves praise, right? So it's almost like something that you should get, or you've earned it, okay? So sometimes when you're a kid, I know this is a very common expression. Someone says, well, that's not fair. And you say, well, you deserve it. It means you're getting what you should get, right? Okay? So why don't we say together, deserves. Deserves. Okay. Yeah. Okay, let's keep going. It says, taking the microphone after Harris, Waltz said, we've got 91 days until the presidential election. My God, that's easy. We'll sleep when we're dead. Okay. We'll sleep when we're dead. This is a common, it's not a super common expression. Basically it means, someone's really tired. They're, Layla, right? And you say, well, you can rest later, right? It means we have to work hard now. Okay. We can sleep when we're dead. Yeah. Does everybody understand that? Okay. It means right now, while we're alive, we have to work hard. Someday, if you really want to sleep, wait till you're dead. Okay. So that's what it's kind of mean. That's kind of what he means. It's an expression. Okay. So I'm not sure why he says, my God, that's easy. I don't know what's easy. I don't know if he means, I don't know. I don't know what he's talking about. So let's read this together. Taking the microphone after Harris, Waltz said, we've got 91 days until the presidential election. My God, that's easy. We'll sleep when we're dead. Okay. Let's go on here. It says, the remarks reflected the urgency of the moment, with Harris tapping Waltz for the ticket during one of the most turbulent periods in modern U.S. politics. Okay, so remarks means Tim Waltz, his comments, what he said, reflected. Okay, so I guess, I don't know why he said it's easy. I don't know if he was being sarcastic. But he's saying this work, when he said we can sleep when we're dead, means we have to work really hard. and that shows or reflects it, 表现, it expresses the urgency of the moment. Okay, so urgency, it's urgent. Why? Because they only have 91 days before the presidential election. Okay, with Harris tapping Waltz. Now, when you tap somebody, what does that mean here? You choose them. It's almost like you tap them, you choose them, you select them, right, to do something. So she chose him for the ticket. There's the presidential ticket during one of the most turbulent periods in America's U.S. politics, modern U.S. politics. Now, this word, I think we've learned this word, but what does turbulent mean? It could be chaotic. What else? What would be a simpler word for turbulent? A very simple word. If something is turbulent, starts with an R. Anyone know? I think we could simply say rough. Okay. So the word, I tell you where I see this word the most is when you fly an airplane and the pilot says, please fasten your seatbelt because we have some rough air ahead. Or often they say turbulence. So it's T-U-R-B-U-L-E-N-C-E. That becomes a 名词. Now, turbulent is a 形容词. So if you want to turn into a noun, we say turbulence. Okay? So the pilot on the airplane might say there is some turbulence ahead. But it's funny. They used to always say turbulence, but I think many people didn't know what that meant. So now they say rough air. Okay? You know how the airplane starts bouncing up and down, and sometimes it gets very scary. So here they're saying it's one of the most turbulent periods in modern U.S. politics. I mean, it's a little bit, like you said, chaotic or 乱 or whatever. There's a lot of things going on at the same time, a lot of conflict. Okay, any questions about that? Yeah. Have what? Of winning? Oh boy. Tim Walz, yeah. White Anglo-Saxon Protestant, yeah. I think Tim Walz would be a WASP, yeah. Well, for her it is because she's, like I said earlier, she's a woman of color, right? So some people are like, oh, you should pick, I don't know, Michelle Obama. But if you have two women of color, then many Americans probably wouldn't vote for them. But I think she thinks, well, if I have a white male as my vice president, then that brings in more people, right, to support me. So to answer your first question, I think my answer would be 谁知道, right? I mean, it's a very interesting race because, one moment Trump seemed like he was definitely going to win. And then now it seems like some people say, oh, Kamala is her poll ranking is higher than Trump's in some states. And other people say, well, Trump is ahead in some states and Kamala is ahead in some states. And, so I don't know. It's really hard to say. My gut feeling, okay, what I say gut feeling, it means gut means your stomach. My gut feeling is that, boy, this is difficult. I still feel that perhaps Trump has an advantage. And I'll tell you why, because historically, when you have a situation like this where the president who's in power says he's not going to run again, and then he appoints his vice president or somebody else to run in his place, historically, he doesn't win. That party doesn't win. I mean, again, who knows? It could be different this time. But I'll give you an example. In President Lyndon Johnson, during the 1968, he had served one term, right? Or, Kennedy, he was Kennedy's vice president. And then he said, I'm not going to run any again. And so he appointed another candidate, stepped in, and Nixon won the election. So a lot of people are also a bit unhappy with the whole how they came up with their candidate, because Biden was their candidate, right? And some people say you can't just change the candidate like that. The party needs to vote, and so it's almost like they took Biden's delegates, his supporters, and they gave them to Kamala Harris. Some people say that's okay, but some people say that's not democratic. You can't just give the candidacy to somebody else. So I don't know. It's very complicated. That's why it says it's so turbulent right now. Is there's all this chaos that's going on because Biden announced that he wasn't going to run again just recently. And that's kind of late, right? It's kind of late in the campaign for him to do that. And of course, there are people that are unhappy about that too. They think Biden should run. Of course, many people don't think he should run, but some people do think he should still run. So anyhow, so with all that going on, it's who knows, but I think maybe Trump has an advantage here. But with Trump, who knows? He tends to talk too much. I think he says strange stuff, and he is an older. Now he's the old candidate, right? Before Biden was the old candidate. Now he's the old candidate. So maybe that's going to hurt him. I don't know. It's just very, very. Yeah. Who knows? I think he talks a lot, and so some people say don't pay attention to what Trump says. Look at what he does. Okay, and during an election, this even in Taiwan, people talk a lot. They say all kinds of things during elections, depending on who they're talking to, and it probably doesn't mean anything, or doesn't mean as much or everything, So I do think. When you look at Trump, for example, I know recently he said some things about Taiwan that upset people, right? And I always say, well, first of all, look at he spent 4 years as president, right? So look at what he did. What was his policy towards Taiwan during his time in office? Okay, you can see that. Number two is look at what both parties, the Republicans and the Democrats, feel about Taiwan right now. Do they support Taiwan? Yeah, very strongly, And so I think you have to look at all these other factors, and not just what he happened to say to somebody during a campaign, during some talk. So, yeah. Anyhow, let's read this. The remarks reflected the urgency of the moment, with Harris tapping Waltz for the ticket during one of the most turbulent periods. Let's say it again, turbulent periods in modern U.S. politics. Okay. It says here, Republicans have rallied around former U.S. President Donald Trump after he was targeted in an attempted assassination last month. Let's read the next sentence here too. It says, just days later, U.S. President Joe Biden ended his re-election campaign, leaving Harris to decide on a running mate. Okay, so when we say the Republicans have rallied around, it means they have come together. They have gathered together, like a rally is a big gathering, right? So we say gathered together or come together around former U.S. President Donald Trump after he was targeted in an attempted assassination. Now, you know what this word means, right? The 动词 is to assassinate, okay? Assassinate means to kill, usually like someone famous, a leader, a president, something. So why don't we say that word, assassinate? Assassinate. And another word, this word assassin is someone the killer. Okay, if you kill somebody, you are an assassin. Now, this word again is, if you're just a normal person, we don't usually say they're assassin. Well, we could, but you would say they're a murderer, right? But in this case, we would say they're an assassin. So why don't we say together, assassin, assassin. And then, of course, this is as a noun, assassination, assassination. Okay. So he was targeted in an attempted, of course, it was not successful, an attempted assassination last month. Oh, really? Yeah, it's like a killer. what do we call that? It's like in America, sometimes we say a hitman. It's like someone whose job is to kill somebody. That's what they're there for. So an assassin, yeah. And then it says here, just days later, President Joe Biden ended, okay, he stopped his re-election campaign, leaving Harris to decide on a running mate. So yeah. So let's read this together. Republicans have rallied around. Let's say it again, rallied around former U.S. President Donald Trump after he was targeted in an attempted assassination. Let's say it again, attempted assassination. Last month. Just days later, U.S. President Joe Biden ended his re-election campaign. Re-election campaign. Leaving Harris to decide on a running mate. Right. It's very interesting. If it's unfortunate in a way, but you know, with this assassination attempt, if you watch the news, if you enjoy history, there is a whole list of American presidents who have either been assassinated or there was an assassination attempt. But if I remember correctly, the last assassination attempt, not successful, was who? Ronald Reagan, yeah. So yeah, he was, and that was a long time ago. That was like early 1980s. So yeah. But you know, sometimes if it's an attempt and they're not successful, like with Trump, it can raise your popularity, right? I don't know if you saw, Ronald Reagan was very famous after the assassination attempt. I saw in Taiwan, the news was talking about this. You know, he was shot. He was actually shot in the chest. And so they went to the hospital, and before they did the kai dao, did you hear this? He asked of course they had to put him under, right? They had to, but he asked the doctors, he said, I hope you're all Republicans. I hope you're all 共和党, right? So he joked, right? And I think the doctor replied, he said, Mr. President, he goes, today we are all Republicans. So, but people like that, right? Because it shows that he has some, spirit. He can joke, 开玩笑. So I think when you saw Donald Trump, his ear was wounded slightly, and, he was, shaking his fist, and people are like, oh yeah, Americans like that. They think, oh, this guy, he's strong, very dramatic. Yeah. 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 Well, and the Secret Service was trying to move him out, right? And he didn't want to go. He wanted to stay. He's like, wait, and yeah. So it's kind of funny. I'm sure he's thinking, okay, this is a great opportunity, right? So yeah, yeah. Okay, so it says here, in choosing the 60-year-old waltz, Harris is elevating a Midwestern governor and union supporter who helped enact a Democratic agenda for his state, including sweeping protections for abortion rights and aid to families. Okay, so this is kind of explaining what she gets or why she chose him. Okay, elevating. Of course, elevating means what? To raise, right? We have an elevator in the building here, right? To elevate means to raise a Midwestern governor, okay? So Midwest is a part of America, like I said, we call that whole middle part of America the Midwest. Often we use a capital M. So, if you think of Illinois and Iowa and Minnesota, that's all Midwest. So Midwestern governor and union supporter. And what's a union? 工会, right? So union supporter, so he supports unions, which unions have a lot of power among some voters. okay, who helped enact. Now, of course, when we say enact, it means to put into law, right? To make into law. If you enact something, it means it becomes a law. So he enacted a democratic agenda. Now, of course, agendas we have for meetings, right? When you have a meeting, you have a list of things you have to talk about. But of course, an agenda here means a democratic a policy, like their 政策, the things they want to do. Of course, this is not an agenda for a meeting. This is an agenda for your policy, your government policy. What do you want to do? What's on your list? So he enacted that. He put it into law. He made it happen for his state, including sweeping protections. Okay, we know protection, but sweeping means, what would sweeping mean? Very wide, very broad. Okay, broad protection, wide protection for abortion rights. And abortion, how do you say this in Chinese? Yeah, so abortion rights, the 权利 for abortion. So he offered broad protection for these rights and aid to families, to help families. So yeah, you can see this his policies are very, I think in America we would say these are more liberal policies, like supporting unions and abortion rights and, aid to families. These are all, very liberal by American standards. Well, no, what they basically, if I'm correct on this, is that it's up to the states, state by state, they have to decide on abortion rights. So the Supreme Court overturned. There was a very famous case, a Supreme Court case called Roe versus Wade, which basically made abortion rights legal for the whole country. But then they've changed that now to say each state can decide what they want to do. So it's up to the states. So here, of course, Minnesota offers wide protection for abortion rights in that state. Yeah, but other states would be different. Okay, so let's read this together. In choosing the 60-year-old waltz, Harris is elevating a Midwestern governor and union supporter who helped enact a democratic agenda for his state, including sweeping protections for abortion rights and aid to families. Okay, I want to just make sure you know this word agenda. You know what agenda means, right? Like before you have a meeting, 开会, often there's a schedule. It's like a schedule for what we're going to talk about in this meeting. That's called an agenda. But agenda can be used like here, it can be used in a broader way. But for example, if you want to ask somebody what they really want to do, you say, what's their plan? What's their purpose? What's their goal? We could say, what's your agenda for this? What do you want to do? So here it seems the democratic agenda means what do they want to do? Yeah, like a platform. Platform, what is that, 平台, right? It would be similar, like what you want to do. What policies do you want to have? Yeah, So platform, policies, your plans, your agenda, what is it you want? Okay, so this is Harris hopes Waltz will help her shore up her campaign standing across the upper Midwest, a critical region in presidential politics that often serves as a buffer for Democrats seeking the White House. Okay, so there's a couple interesting words here. The Harris hopes this guy will help her shore up. Now, this word shore up, what does that mean? Yes, strengthen, to make stronger, to support, okay? So if you shore something up, it means you add more support to it. You add support, okay? So to shore up her campaign standing. Now, her standing means her campaign's position, or they're across the upper Midwest. Now, upper Midwest means the Midwest, the northern Midwest, a critical region, a very important region in presidential politics that serves as a buffer for Democrats seeking the White House. So it's almost like this area is very Democrat. And so when you're running for president, that area usually is like it's a secure area for you. It's like a buffer is like, how do we describe buffer? Usually a buffer is like a space between you and someone else. But here it almost means like it's like something that you already have. It's like a security. It offers you extra security. So these states usually vote Democrat, so it helps them. But they want to increase their support. They want to make sure that they have their support there. They want to make sure their support in the upper Midwest is strong and keep it strong, okay? Buffer zone, yeah. It's like an area that is your secure area. It protects you. Yeah, it's like protection, yeah. Okay, so let's read this. Harris hopes Waltz will help her shore up her campaign standing across the upper Midwest, a critical region in presidential politics that often serves as a buffer for Democrats seeking the White House. White House. Yeah. The what? Rust Belt is actually more east. That's like Ohio, Michigan, Western Pennsylvania. Yeah, that area. And you know why we call it the Rust Belt, right? It's what does rust mean? Because what industry do we have there? Steel, cars, so we call that area, that part of the country is called the Rust Belt because of all those traditional industries that were there, and many of them are gone now. So anyhow, he's facing now, Tim Walz will be facing the Republican vice presidential candidate, who is who? Do you know who it is? Who did Trump pick as his vice president? Vance. So his name is J.D. Vance, okay? And he is from the Rust Belt. He is from Ohio, which is a very important state. Hillbilly elegy. Yeah, it's an area that was hit hard by American industry moving out of the United States. Well, I don't know. I really don't know. Maybe in certain areas, in certain companies, certain towns, who knows? But I read his book actually years ago, before he was a senator, before he did anything. It's a good book. Very interesting book about his childhood. He grew up with his grandmother because his mother had drug problems. And I think J.D. Vance is a very interesting choice by Trump because he also, for many people, his story is very much American story, right? He came from nothing, very poor background, and then he joined the, 美国海军, the U.S. Marine Corps 海军陆战队, and then he went to Yale 大学, right? Very good university. And now he's a senator and then vice presidential candidate. So a lot of people look at his story and they're like, that's kind of the American dream, right? So anyhow, we have these two different guys now both running as vice presidential candidates. So we'll see. It should be very interesting, very funny. Mm-hmm. Well, no, a lot of people say now globalization is being reversed, right? Because countries are moving industry back into their home countries, right? Before everything was everywhere, but this is where someone like J.D. Vance would say his hometown, where did all that industry go? It went to China. It went to other countries, right? And that's why, people like him would say that, we need to bring industry back to the United States because people lost their jobs, Well, he grew up in Ohio, and I think he spent some time in West Virginia too. It's right on the border there, but mostly Ohio, I think. Yeah. So, yeah. Anyhow, I'm sure there's a lot online you can read about both of these. Well, all of these people. Very interesting, and we'll see what happens. Okay. Thank you for your attention, and we'll see you next time.